3 months after signing the divorce papers, a man once hailed as a symbol of New York's success suddenly spotted his ex-wife in the middle of a crowded Manhattan street. But she was no longer the exhausted woman who had once waited silently for him inside a cold penthouse. Now, she walked with quiet strength, one hand resting gently on her rounded belly. In that instant, his heart staggered. The world he had built, towering skyscrapers, billion-dollar deals, suddenly felt meaningless. Could any of it ever replace a child, a family, the life he had thrown away? The man who once made Wall Street bow now stood frozen like a beggar with nothing. He couldn't breathe. He couldn't look away from her figure. And in his mind, one searing question echoed over and over: was that child his? The sounds of cars, footsteps, and voices rushed around him. Yet in that moment, time itself seemed to stop. This was no chance encounter. It was the beginning of a reckoning, a journey of remorse, and perhaps his final chance at redemption. If you've ever believed that money and fame can't fill the emptiness of a heart, stay until the very end of this story. Don't forget to let us know where you're watching this video from. The penthouse glittered like a museum. Glass walls, rare paintings, marble floors. Everything shone, yet everything felt hollow. Adrian sat at his desk, staring at the divorce papers waiting in front of him. His hand rested on a sleek fountain pen. It was not just any pen. Years ago, Selena had given it to him when he closed his first investment deal. Back then, it symbolized love, faith, and the promise of a future. Now, the same pen felt heavy, almost cruel. He twirled it between his fingers, remembering her smile the day she placed it in a gift box. That smile no longer belonged to him. The silence in the penthouse pressed against his chest. No laughter echoed through the halls, no soft voice called his name. Only the hum of the air conditioning filled the void. He pressed the pen down. The ink touched paper. His name stretched across the page, sealing the end. The world outside sparkled with light, but inside, Adrian felt the sharp sting of loss. A symbol that once meant devotion had become the tool of separation. Money had bought him the pen, the penthouse, the empire. But it could not buy back her heart. The next morning, the door stood open. Selena appeared in the hallway, her hand gripping the strap of an old leather bag. It was worn, frayed at the edges, but sturdy. She had packed only the essentials. She did not want his luxury, his art, or his imported furniture. She only wanted freedom. Adrian's eyes followed her movements. He wanted to stop her, but his pride held him in place. Around them, the penthouse gleamed with wealth. Italian leather couches, a grand piano, walls filled with priceless paintings. Yet, none of it could hold her. She paused by the door. For one moment, her hazel eyes softened, as if searching for the man she once loved. But all she saw was the life that had drowned them. Her voice trembled, but it carried strength. "This world isn't mine. I can't breathe here anymore." The bag swung against her hip as she stepped out. The sound of the door clicking shut echoed louder than any argument they had ever had. Adrian stood frozen. Surrounded by gold and glass, he realized none of it mattered. The bag on her shoulder was plain, yet it carried more meaning than all his riches combined. That night, New York pulsed with life. Lights burned from Times Square to Central Park. Horns echoed in the streets, crowds moved like rivers. But inside the penthouse, Adrian sat alone. He poured a glass of rare scotch, aged longer than most marriages lasted. The liquid glowed amber in the crystal glass. He lifted it, hoping it might numb the ache in his chest. The first sip burned, but not enough. The second sip was bitter, sharper than he expected. By the third, he understood. No amount of alcohol could drown the silence. The city celebrated outside. Deals were made, power was traded. People laughed in expensive restaurants. But Adrian, the man who once owned every room he entered, now owned only emptiness. He set the glass down. His reflection in the window stared back at him. Sharp suit, polished watch, hollow eyes. He had achieved the dream. Wealth, power, respect. Yet in losing her, he had never felt poorer. The hum of the city went on, but in his chest only cold spread. He realized the cruel paradox. He had everything, and nothing at all. Hundreds of miles away, Selena arrived in Asheville, North Carolina. The city was smaller, slower, almost quiet compared to Manhattan. The first breath she took outside the bus station felt different, cleaner, freer. She carried her leather bag into a small rental house on a tree-lined street. The shutters needed paint, the yard was overgrown, the kitchen tiles were cracked, but the air inside was light. She could finally exhale. Boxes filled the living room, labeled in her careful handwriting. Books, kitchen, miscellaneous. She set them down and stood still. No buzzing phone, no glass towers looming outside the window, just silence, birdsong, and the rustle of leaves. Selina walked onto the porch. Across the street, an elderly couple strolled hand in hand, laughing softly. A pang touched her chest. It was not envy, but longing, for something simple, for a love that breathed. The house was far from glamorous, but it was hers. It was not suffocating like the penthouse. Here she could rebuild, piece by piece, without shadows of wealth pressing on her. For the first time in years, Selina felt a flicker of hope. The world she had left behind no longer defined her. She could breathe again. Alone in his penthouse, Adrian drifted back to the past. He saw Selina sitting cross-legged on their old sofa, her hair tied loosely, a book open in her lap. It was The Great Gatsby. She loved to read it aloud, her voice alive with feeling. She said Gatsby had everything, yet was empty, chasing a dream that could never satisfy him. Adrian had laughed at the time. He teased her for loving a tragic character. He told her wealth and ambition were not curses, but blessings. Back then, he believed it with his whole heart. Now, the memory cut deeper than any blade. He finally understood what Selina had seen. Adrian had become Gatsby himself, surrounded by riches, celebrated by strangers, but hollow inside. The lines she once recited echoed in his mind. He had everything, but he was still searching. Adrian pressed his palm against his forehead. He wished he had listened more, cared more, loved more. The image of her soft smile, her glowing eyes, made his chest ache. He had dismissed her wisdom once. Tonight, it felt like prophecy. The book was gone from the shelf, but its lesson remained. She had seen his emptiness before he ever did. Days passed, and Adrian threw himself into work. Newspapers called him the next Elon Musk. Investors praised his genius. Magazine covers showed his sharp jawline, his tailored suits, his empire of technology. He was the face of innovation, the man everyone wanted to know. Crowds clapped when he spoke at conferences. Cameras flashed at every gala. His name trended online. His quotes were repeated in business schools. To the world, he was untouchable. But when the lights dimmed and the doors closed, silence came rushing back. The hotel rooms felt colder. The boardrooms felt smaller. No matter how many hands he shook, no one truly held him. The irony stabbed him with each headline. The louder the applause grew, the emptier his chest felt. He had spent years chasing glory, and when it arrived, it left him lonelier than ever. Adrian scrolled through glowing articles on his phone, yet all he could think of was Selina's quiet laugh, her steady presence, the home they once dreamed of building together. The world believed he had won. In truth, he had lost. And no headline, no deal, no celebration could cover the hollow space inside his heart. To escape the ache, Adrian let himself be pulled into another world. Her name was Vivian Blake, a former model turned socialite. She was elegant, polished, always draped in designer silk. With her on his arm, cameras loved him even more. Vivian spoke of fashion shows, parties, the newest circles of power. Her laughter sparkled at every table, but it never reached her eyes. Their dinners were filled with chatter about names, brands, and appearances. She admired his money, he admired her beauty, but beyond that, there was nothing. Every smile felt rehearsed, every kiss felt staged. Adrian could not shake the comparison. Vivian was everything Selina was not. Selina had been warm, patient, willing to sit in silence beside him. Vivian feared silence. She filled it with gossip, with noise, with surface shine. Adrian knew it was a performance, a mask to distract himself from his own regret. Yet he played along, pretending he was fine, pretending Vivian was enough. But each time she laughed too loudly, each time she posed for attention, he felt Selina's absence more sharply. Vivian was the perfect accessory for his world of wealth, but she was not love, not even close. Every evening, as the sun slid down over Manhattan, Adrian felt a sharp pull inside. The orange glow against the glass towers was beautiful, but it was also unbearable. Each sunset reminded him of Selina. She used to drag him out onto the balcony, insisting he pause his work, insisting he look at the sky. "Stop counting minutes, Adrian," she would whisper. "Just watch the colors." She found peace in something simple. He found annoyance back then. He always rushed back to emails, to calls, to deals. Now he sat alone by the same balcony doors, the glass cold against his back. The sky painted itself with fire, but there was no one beside him to share it. His phone buzzed on the table. He ignored it. No message could fill this silence. The city pulsed, but inside him, only emptiness spread. He realized that the moments he once brushed off were the ones he longed for most. Her laughter, the way she leaned into his arm, the warmth of her hand in his. The sunsets had not changed. He had. And now, every evening, they haunted him like ghosts of what he had thrown away. One sleepless night, Adrian sat at his desk, his eyes burning from hours of staring at nothing. He opened his laptop. Without thinking, his fingers typed one word: Asheville. He remembered Selena mentioning it once, her voice soft with longing. A place with art, mountains, and air that felt alive. He had dismissed it then. Tonight, it felt like the only place he could breathe. A flight left the next day. He booked it instantly. No hesitation, no plan, only an ache that demanded action. He closed the laptop and leaned back. For the first time in months, a strange calm filled his chest. The next morning, he told his assistant he was leaving indefinitely. Her eyes widened. "But, sir, the board—" He cut her off. "Handle it." The words felt final. By the afternoon, he was gone. The empire, the headlines, the endless meetings, he left them all behind. As the plane took off, Adrian stared out the window. The skyline of New York shrank until it was only a line of light in the distance. His heart pounded with fear and hope. For the first time in years, he was chasing something money could not buy. The car rolled out of Asheville's small airport and into winding streets lined with trees. Adrian pressed his hand against the window, taking in the sight. No glass towers, no endless noise, only the Blue Ridge Mountains rising in the distance, wrapped in mist. The driver pointed toward the hills. "That's where the colors are brightest in autumn," he said. Adrian nodded, his throat tight. It was nothing like New York. Downtown passed in a blur of coffee shops, art galleries, and people strolling at an easy pace. No one rushed. No one seemed chained to their phones. Couples walked hand in hand. Families laughed on sidewalks. The rhythm was slower, softer. The car climbed toward his hotel, a historic inn built of stone, overlooking the valley. When he stepped out, the air met him, cool, crisp, and sharp with pine. He inhaled deeply, and for the first time in years, he felt something shift. It was quiet here, too quiet for a man used to deals and deadlines. Yet, beneath the stillness was peace, the kind Selena had always searched for. Adrian stood still, staring at the mountains. For the first time, he wondered if peace was possible for him too. The next morning, Adrian wandered through Asheville's quiet streets. Cafes spilled music onto sidewalks. Local artists displayed paintings of mountains and rivers. For a moment, he almost forgot why he came. Then a flyer caught his eye. It was taped to a lamppost, edges curled from the wind. Willow Haven Women's Shelter. The bold letters seemed to leap from the page. A drawing of open hands cradling a small house rested beneath the title. Adrian froze. His chest tightened. Selena had spoken once, long ago, about helping women rebuild their lives, a dream he had dismissed as impractical. Now, here it was, alive in front of him. He reached out, fingers brushing the paper. A whisper inside told him this was no coincidence. She could be there. She could be behind those doors, working, living, waiting. His heart pounded as he memorized the address. For the first time since leaving New York, his steps carried purpose. Every block, every turn, felt heavy with possibility. Adrian clenched the flyer in his hand. If fate had brought him here, he would follow. Somewhere inside that shelter, he believed, was the woman he had lost, and perhaps the only chance left to make things right. The shelter was modest, a brick building with peeling paint and a garden of wildflowers out front. Adrian's polished shoes crunched against the gravel as he walked to the entrance. His chest felt tight, each step heavier than the last. The door creaked open. Voices floated from inside, soft, steady, filled with life. Then, suddenly, she appeared. Selena stepped out into the sunlight. Her hair was tied back, her face calm but tired. One hand rested gently on her rounded belly. For a moment, she didn't see him. She adjusted the strap of her bag and glanced toward the garden. When her eyes lifted and met his, the world seemed to stop. Adrian froze. His throat closed. The sight of her, the curve of her stomach, the guarded strength in her gaze, struck him harder than any boardroom defeat. Selina's breath caught. Shock flickered across her face, quickly replaced by something colder, heavier. Neither spoke. The silence between them carried years of pain, choices, and regret. Adrian wanted to move, to reach out, but his feet refused. He could only stand there, caught between the past and the future, staring at the woman who had once been his whole world. The silence broke with her voice, steady, sharp, cutting straight to the bone. "Why are you here, Adrian?" He opened his mouth, but the words tangled in his throat. For months he had rehearsed speeches, apologies, promises. None of them fit now. He swallowed hard, eyes fixed on her. "I was wrong," he whispered. His voice cracked. "I lost sight of what mattered. I lost sight of you." Selina's arms tightened across her chest. Her expression did not soften. "Do you think saying that changes anything? Do you think showing up here erases the years I begged for your time?" Adrian's chest ached. He wanted to explain, to lay bare every regret, but the truth was simple. He had failed her. "I don't expect forgiveness," he said quietly, "but I had to see you." Her eyes glistened, though her face remained stone. "You don't get to decide that anymore. You don't get to walk back in as if nothing broke." The sting of her words cut deep. Yet beneath them, Adrian felt the faintest trace of something else. Hurt, yes, but also proof that she once loved him enough to wound him this much. The garden around them buzzed with summer insects, but the air between them was heavy. Selina shifted her bag, her voice firm, her gaze unwavering. "You can't just appear here, Adrian," she said. "You can't show up with regret in your eyes and expect everything to return. That's not how it works." Her words landed like stones. Adrian lowered his head, the weight pressing against his chest. He had built towers that scraped the sky, but he could not lift this moment. "I know," he answered softly. "I know I don't deserve to stand here. I just—" His voice broke. "I couldn't stay away." Selina shook her head, her hand brushing her belly as if shielding the life inside. "This isn't your world anymore. You left it behind when you left me behind." Adrian's throat burned. He wanted to argue, to beg, but no plea could undo the truth. The door to the shelter opened behind her. Voices called Selina's name. She turned, giving him one last look. Her eyes were steady, but her lips trembled. Then she walked inside. Adrian remained outside, rooted to the gravel, the echo of her refusal crushing him more than silence ever had. Adrian stood outside the shelter long after Selina had gone in. The voices inside faded, but her words stayed sharp in his ears. She had shut the door on him, yet something inside him refused to walk away. For years, he had let pride decide everything. He built companies, won contracts, and crushed competitors, but pride had destroyed the only thing that mattered. Tonight, for the first time, he chose humility. He looked at the shelter again. It was not just a building. It was her world now. If he wanted to reach her, he had to step into it, not as a billionaire, not as a man with power, but as someone willing to serve. His phone buzzed with messages from his board, but he ignored them. This was no longer about shareholders or deadlines. It was about proving he could change, even if it took every ounce of him. Adrian whispered to himself, almost a vow, "I'll stay. I'll do whatever it takes." The night air was cool against his skin. For the first time, he felt the weight of his decision settle into his bones. He was not leaving Asheville. He was not leaving her again. The next morning, Adrian showed up at the shelter's garden. His suit was gone, replaced with rolled-up sleeves and work boots borrowed from the supply closet. A shovel leaned against his shoulder. The staff stared, whispering to each other. They knew his face from the news. The billionaire was now bending over, pulling weeds from the soil. Sweat dripped from his forehead. His hands, once used only for signing contracts, were caked with dirt. He carried bricks to the back lot, his muscles straining. He hauled lumber, stacked crates, and patched a broken fence. By noon, his shirt was soaked, his palms blistered. Yet, he did not stop. One worker finally muttered, half in disbelief, "He's not joking. He's really doing it." Adrian only nodded and kept moving. Each task was a test. Each nail he hammered was a wordless apology. The billionaire who once ruled boardrooms now bowed to the simplest labor. And, for the first time in years, the sweat running down his face felt like something honest. Selina stood at the second-floor window of the shelter, arms crossed. Below, Adrian shoveled gravel under the blazing sun. His shirt clung to his back, his movements heavy, yet steady. She had seen him in the $1,000 suits commanding attention in crowded rooms, but she had never seen him like this, bent, tired, dirty, silent. A strange tug pulled at her chest. Part of her wanted to believe this was real, that he had changed. But her mind fought back. She remembered nights spent alone in their penthouse waiting for him while he chose work over her. She remembered every unanswered plea, every broken promise. Still, she could not look away. Adrian wiped his brow, leaned on the shovel, and caught his breath. For a second, their eyes almost met through the glass. Selina stepped back quickly, her heart pounding. Her hand pressed against her belly. She whispered to herself, "Don't be fooled. Don't forget." Yet, deep inside, something stirred. A seed of doubt in her anger. A flicker of hope she did not want to admit. Watching him struggle in the sun, Selina felt torn between memory and possibility, between the man who hurt her and the man she hoped he could become. That evening, dark clouds rolled over Asheville. Rain struck hard against the windows, and the wind howled through the old shelter walls. Suddenly, the power snapped off. The rooms sank into silence, broken only by children's frightened cries. Volunteers scrambled for flashlights. Mothers tried to calm their little ones. Fear spread quickly. Adrian moved without hesitation. He gathered candles from the storage room and lit them one by one. The flicker of warm light pushed back the shadows. Slowly, calm returned. But the children were still restless, clinging to their mothers. Adrian spotted a shelf of donated books. He pulled one down. To Kill a Mockingbird. He sat on a chair in the center of the room, his voice steady and deep as he began to read. The words rolled out, smooth and measured. His tone carried warmth, a rhythm that made the children quiet down, eyes wide with attention. The storm raged outside, but inside, his voice created a safe place. Even the adults listened, their shoulders loosening, their breathing slowing. In that moment, Adrian was not a billionaire, not a stranger. He was simply a man bringing comfort, his presence steady in the dark. From the hallway, Selina watched the glow of candles spread across the room. Her eyes followed Adrian as he read, the book resting easily in his hands. His voice filled the space, calm and sure, the same voice that once lulled her to sleep during restless nights. She leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, but her heart betrayed her. The years seemed to peel away. She remembered him in the early days, reading aloud while she curled beside him, safe and warm. For a few minutes it felt like that man had returned. The children giggled softly at his words. Mothers exchanged grateful looks. Even the storm outside seemed to fade, replaced by the cadence of his reading. Selina pressed her lips together, trying to hold back the rush of emotion. She had built walls around her heart, but now cracks were forming. She told herself it was nothing, just nostalgia, just weakness. Yet she couldn't look away. Every word, every gesture pulled her back to a time when love felt simple. In the dim light, she whispered to herself, "Don't forget who he became." But her heart answered with a tremor, "And don't forget who he was." The storm passed by morning. The garden outside the shelter glistened with rain. Leaves dripped, soil smelled rich and fresh. Adrian worked quietly, repairing a section of the fence that the wind had broken. Selina stepped onto the porch, watching him. For a long moment, she said nothing. Finally, she walked toward him, her steps slow but certain. "Why are you doing this?" she asked, her voice low. "Why stay? Why sweat? Why pretend to belong here?" Adrian set down the hammer and turned to her. His eyes held no arrogance, only weariness and truth. "Because losing you," he said, steady but soft, "was the greatest mistake of my life. Every brick I lay, every nail I drive, it's all to show you I won't make that mistake again." Selina's breath caught. The words landed heavier than she expected. She wanted to dismiss them, to say they meant nothing. But the way he looked at her, tired, humble, desperate, made it hard. Her heart thudded in her chest. She clenched her hands, searching for resolve. Yet a part of her, the part she tried to silence, longed to believe him. Selina stood with her arms folded, her gaze steady on him. The garden smelled of wet earth, the fence half mended between them. She spoke slowly, each word careful, deliberate. "People don't change overnight, Adrian," she said. "You can't show up here, do a little work, and expect me to forget the years I begged for your time." Her words were sharp, but her eyes trembled. Adrian nodded, shoulders heavy. "You're right," he admitted. "I don't deserve forgiveness. Not today, maybe not ever. I'm not asking you to erase the past. I'm only asking for a chance to prove that I can be different." The honesty in his voice surprised her. There was no speech polished for cameras, no promise wrapped in ambition. Just a man stripped down to his regret. Selina lowered her eyes, pressing her hand against her belly. Silence stretched between them. She wanted to push him away, yet something in her heart paused. At last, she turned back toward the shelter. "We'll see," she murmured, more to herself than to him. Adrian picked up the hammer again. The slow rhythm of his work carried into the air, steady, patient, almost like a vow. The days that followed were quiet, almost ordinary. Adrian worked with the other volunteers as if he were one of them. He climbed onto the roof to patch broken shingles. He hauled heavy boxes of donations from the storage shed. He stacked crates of canned food in the pantry until his arms ached. He never complained. He never boasted. He simply showed up each morning, sleeves rolled, hands ready. At first, the staff whispered behind his back. Some thought it was a show. But as the hours turned into days, their whispers shifted. They watched him bend low to carry crates, saw him kneel in the dirt to fix a loose board, and noticed how he never once stepped aside to keep his clothes clean. Respect grew slowly, almost reluctantly. A young volunteer handed him a bottle of water with a smile. An older woman clapped him on the back after he repaired a broken step. Even Selina noticed from the distance. She saw how others began to trust him, how children laughed when he carried them on his shoulders. She would not say it aloud, but in the quiet of her heart she wondered, maybe, just maybe, he meant what he said. On a Saturday morning, the town square filled with booths and music. Adrian wandered through, unsure what he was even looking for. His eyes landed on a table of handmade pottery. Simple mugs, bowls with uneven edges, glazed in earthy tones. One mug caught his eye. It wasn't perfect. A faint crack in the glaze ran down the side, but it was sturdy, beautiful in its flaws. He thought of Selina. That afternoon, he left it on her desk in the shelter office with a note folded inside. "For your tea breaks, from someone trying to learn what really matters." Selina found it hours later. She lifted the mug slowly, running her fingers across the uneven glaze. It was such a small thing, nothing like the grand jewels or handbags he once gave her. Yet it struck deeper. Her chest tightened. Because this was different. It was quiet, thoughtful. It asked for nothing in return. When she saw him later in the hallway, she didn't speak. She only held his eyes for a moment longer than usual. Adrian felt the difference. Small, but real, like a door opening just a crack. A week later, Adrian asked Selina to meet him outside on the porch. The autumn air was crisp, the mountains washed in gold. He held an envelope in his hand, his expression steady but nervous. "I need to give you something," he said. Selina frowned, cautious. She opened the envelope and froze. Inside was a deed. A piece of land on the edge of Asheville, enough space to build another shelter. Her voice shook. "Adrian, what is this?" He drew in a breath. "It's yours. For the women here. For the children. I don't want my name on it. This isn't about me." Selina's eyes filled, confusion and emotion clashing. "Why would you—" "Because money built my empire," he cut in softly. "But it cost me everything that mattered. If I can use it now to give back, maybe I can start making things right." The paper trembled in her hands. This wasn't a grand gesture for show. It was sacrifice. Real and irreversible. For the first time, she saw not the billionaire, not the man who once abandoned her. She saw someone learning how to love differently. Selina clutched the deed to her chest and the tears came. Not polite tears, but deep, shaking sobs. Years of loneliness, anger, and quiet strength all spilled out at once. Adrian stood still. Every fiber of him wanted to reach for her, to hold her, but he didn't. Not this time. He only whispered, voice raw, "I'll be here, if you need me." That restraint pierced her even more. He wasn't forcing his way back into her heart. He was waiting, letting her choose. She wiped at her face, ashamed of breaking in front of him. "You don't understand what this does to me," she said hoarsely. "I don't know if I can trust again. I don't know if I can survive being hurt twice." Adrian lowered his eyes. "Then let me prove I won't. Not with words, with time." Silence filled the porch, broken only by the distant sound of children laughing inside. Selina looked down at the land deed again, her tears smudging the ink. She feared him. She missed him. She wanted to believe. For the first time since their marriage ended, her heart whispered a dangerous thought. Maybe people really can change. The air buzzed with soft chatter as townspeople gathered in front of the new building. A banner hung above the porch, painted with steady hands. Evelyn's Haven, named after Selina's grandmother, the woman who once taught her what resilience meant. Selina stood by the ribbon, scissors in her hand, trembling slightly as cameras clicked and children clapped. Her voice wavered as she spoke. "This place is not about me. It's about giving women and children a chance to breathe again." She cut the ribbon, and cheers rose. The doors swung open, revealing rooms painted in warm colors, shelves filled with books, and beds ready for those with nowhere else to go. In the crowd, Adrian stood near the back. He wore no suit, no sign of wealth, only a simple shirt. When the applause rang out, he didn't step forward. He stayed behind, smiling quietly, his heart swelling not from ownership, but from knowing he had helped build something that belonged to her. Selina caught his eye from the porch. For a second, their gazes held. No words, no promises, just a flicker of gratitude, and something deeper, unspoken. Weeks later, the garden behind Evelyn's Haven bloomed with autumn colors. Children played near the fence while Selina stood under a maple tree, her hands folded across her belly. Adrian approached slowly, holding himself back. She turned, and without a word, she placed the small bundle into his arms. Their child, the one he had never dared to hope he'd hold. The baby stirred, soft sounds breaking the silence. Adrian froze. His hands trembled, his breath caught in his chest. He had closed billion-dollar deals, faced rooms full of ruthless investors, yet nothing had ever terrified him more than holding this fragile life. Tears streaked down his face before he could stop them. He whispered, voice breaking, "I don't deserve this, but I will never let go." Selina watched him, her lips trembling. For the first time, she saw not the man of glass towers, but a father, stripped of pride, undone by love. Her chest tightened, a spark of hope warming the ache that had lived there for months. The garden was quiet, save for the rustle of leaves. In that stillness, something sacred began to take root. Late one afternoon, the sky turned amber, and the crisp air carried the scent of fallen leaves. Adrian sat on the porch steps, the baby asleep inside. Selina walked over, her footsteps light against the wooden boards. For a moment, they didn't speak. The silence wasn't heavy anymore. It was tender. Selina sat beside him. Her hands rested in her lap, fidgeting, until finally she reached across. Her fingers slid over his, tentative, fragile. "I'm ready," she whispered, her eyes shimmering, ready to try again. Adrian turned to her, stunned. His chest tightened and he couldn't trust his voice. He only nodded, his thumb brushing gently against hers. They sat like that, hands clasped, watching the sun slip behind the mountains. No declarations, no dramatic vows. Just two broken souls daring to rebuild. The world around them seemed to pause. The leaves rustled, the children laughed in the distance, but for that moment, nothing else mattered. They had lost so much, yet here, on this quiet porch in Asheville, they found the courage to begin again. He had once stood above the city, surrounded by glass towers and endless applause, but all the wealth, all the fame, all the power could not protect him from the truth. He had lost what mattered most. Adrian learned that money can build empires, but it cannot mend a broken heart. He learned that success means nothing when it leaves you alone at night. And he learned that love, fragile as it may be, is the only thing strong enough to give life meaning. Besides Selina, holding the child he thought he would never know, he finally understood. Success was never the penthouse or the headlines. It was never the markets bowing to his name. Success was someone who stayed when the rest of the world walked away. Their story was not perfect, and it never would be. Trust takes time. Forgiveness takes courage. But together, they chose to begin again. And in that choice lay the greatest truth of all. The measure of a life is not what you own, but who you love. If this story touched you, share it with someone who needs hope. And stay with us for more journeys that remind us what truly matters.